my boss from Harrisburg, Tanya Vasquez. My other boss is in the other room, Fran Langen.
Oh, okay.
Tanya did a tremendous favor for us today. She is the Bureau Director of the Bureau of Certification. Does anybody know what that means?
Really important.
No, what is the Bureau of Certification over? I want to see what they know. Who is she in charge of? All the what?
State members.
Yes. For the whole
State.
Okay, that's good. Tanya, this is the first group in Keystone in a master's course in management of early care and education programs. This is your what, 5th class? Or 4th? Fifth. I've had them, this is my 3rd with them, so they know me well. But, so this whole class today, this whole course that started in August 25th and it'll end in October 10th. We do a lot of online. This is we have 2 face-to-face sessions today and one in about a couple of weeks. And it's about policies, regulations, and standards. We've already had some sessions on policies. I sure hope that's catching me. Can you, Becky, do me a favor and go up and look at the little screen on the side and see if you can see me.
Yes.
Can you see us?
Yes.
Thank you. Oh, we've already spent a session on policies, like handbooks, what needs to go in them, and we talked about, it's one thing to have the regulation, it's another thing to have it in policy, and that's where we were when you came in. So, Tanya has spent a lot of time in the child care field, and today, when we talk, we're going to have like a little discussion here between Tanya and me, and you can ask questions, and we're going to ask you, I'm going to have some group situations for you to look at, and some regular situations for you to look at. Tanya's not going to really talk about the role today. It's about, I'll let you follow her talk about it, the 20-some years, the 20-plus years you spent in the field, going to daycare centers, etc.
Good morning. Thanks, Kate, for asking me to come here this morning to enter into this dialogue. I do appreciate the opportunity to do that. And I was a certification rep for about 12 and a half years. Was a supervisor for about 9 years, and then became the regional director with North Central Region for about a year, and then a little over a year ago was asked to become the Bureau Director. So I've been with the Bureau of Certification now like 23 years. I feel very strongly about what our Bureau does and ensuring health and safety in child care facilities throughout the Commonwealth. And we currently are increasing our staff complement. We are hiring an additional 40 certification reps to meet the reauthorization of the Child Care Development Block Grant. So in addition to our annual inspections of our child care centers and our group child care homes, we're also going to be conducting annual inspections in our family child care homes. So there's a lot going on in the Bureau of Certification right now, and we're ramping up to get ready to implement some new regulations. But just let me give you a little bit of background too, as far as the framework of the laws and the regulations. I'm sure you're all familiar with Chapter 3270. Everybody here currently in
You bring it?
the child care?
Oh, hold it up, I want to see. I want to prove.
Yay.
See?
Oh,
What
wow.
about this paint? Look at that, there's a paint in blue.
Okay.
Where'd you get that blue
Wonderful.
book, Barb? Blue book?
Me?
Yeah.
My inspectors.
Are they current and the most up to date?
They're from 08.
Oh,
Nope.
okay.
No, they're not. Yes, they are.
That's one thing we're going to talk about, how the most up-to-date ones you have.
Yeah, I think there was actually one from 2010.
Yes.
So, is everybody signed up for the listserv so that you are, okay, great, so that is definitely a must.
Wait, I gotta see some quiz, does everybody know what the listserv is? Who's gotta know, if you don't,
Okay.
if you don't know the listserv, do you know the listserv?
I saw you posted for us, but I couldn't figure it out.
You couldn't figure it out. See, that, I wanna make sure,
Okay.
listserv, that is the Bureau's way of emailing everybody saying, here's what the regs are, that's the only way you're gonna stay on top of things, it's a must. So I posted it, the link, and you couldn't,
I went to it, but then I didn't know I had to have like a username or something, so like I don't know, I couldn't.
it says join the listserv.
You have to join it and they send you an email and then.
You have to
has
join
like-
it and they have to send you an email. That, I put a link on, didn't I, for this week?
Yeah.
See, I can't remember anything.
But it doesn't
Well, I
always-
know I put it on there, but I put a link on that you can go to, and it's, there's a little column on the left or something, or the middle, that says join the listserv. You should all be on it, because as a, pardon?
I tried to get on from my home and I couldn't get on it, but I can use the one from school. But for individual, I could not, it wouldn't work.
Certain, yeah,
Really?
yeah. But
Because you, I think, anyhow, tell me if I'm wrong, you provide to us an email address.
Right.
So that when these updated policies and procedures and regulations are, that's pretty much how we communicate now with the Bureau. You know, the day of the reg book, you know, that blue book, we don't have that anymore. We don't do like the mass mailings. Everything is relayed to you via the listserv. So we have to make sure that
everybody's on it.
everybody's on that.
I could get it from work, from my work, but not.
Okay.
You can get it
I
from
tried
work.
to do it from home, so
See,
that
now I
could
get
have it.
I can get mine at my home address. I get it all the time at home. Anybody else get theirs at home?
I do.
Okay, so maybe Julia,
Well, I when I clicked like the join or whatever, it brought me up to a page where I have to like have a username, password or something. So I don't know what.
I guess you have to set it up.
If you
Anybody?
just put your email in and then
Have to,
say
right.
reset your password, you'll be able to do, and then.
Yeah. But one of the things that we will talk about, and I have said this in a few of the lectures that I've posted, is it's your responsibility to know the regs and get the updates. It can't be an excuse that, well, I never saw that reg, right?
Right. Right.
So you would still be cited for something even though you never saw it. That's why you have to be on the listserv. Especially the one that came out this week, we just did one, an update on, anybody see it?
And clearance.
Clearances. Okay, so I have that, a copy of that with me so we can go over that.
Good. Where were we? So let me just also say, again, hopefully everybody is familiar with the chapter 3270. Has anybody ever heard of chapter 20, which is also under the Title 55 Public Welfare Code, because it does also apply to certified facilities, and the information it's online, and it's also a very thin book. I happen to have an old one that's been around for quite a while, but that is where the information is provided regarding how we issue a certificate of compliance. So upon inspection, if you're in full compliance with all regulations, or if you're cited for a regulatory violation, and you provide a plan to correct that, it's an acceptable plan, your rep verifies that's corrected, upon full compliance, you're issued that certificate of compliance to operate for a year. It also then will inform the reader of when the department may refuse to renew, revoke a certificate, or deny an application. So that's also important information, and it also directs that the department has to conduct an annual inspection at all certified facilities. So not a lot of people are familiar with Chapter 20, but it does apply to licensing or certifying child care facilities. And basically the statutory language, or the law, is Articles 9 and 10 that come into play. It's the language, again, that authorizes the Department of Human Services, because we're no longer DPW, we're DHS now, and those laws apply to both profit and nonprofit facilities and do authorize the department to enter, inspect, and supervise childcare facilities. So you actually work under a lot of different laws as we do in the Bureau of Certification, but primarily your day-to-day operating regulations that come into play are Chapter 3270.
And a quick question, would Article 9 and 10 include Head Start and Early Head Start?
It does, unless if they're part of the childcare program, it could. There's also some separate Head Start programs, some federal Head Start programs that operate under a different set of regulations.
So that would not include.
If it's a
Unless
separate and
it was a-
distinct entity.
okay.
If it's in some of our programs have both Head Start and childcare together, and then yes, it does apply.
How many here besides Beth has Head Start?
And ours is like that, like we have Head Start and it's mixed with regular childcare, student children, so it would probably be what she's telling me.
So, the other thing I was gonna mention too, Tanya, about Articles 9 and 10, the law, those things were written like, what, in the 60s?
Yes,
60s or 70s?
it's pretty old.
And they're pretty old, and it's interesting, the law. So every time we have something in Harrisburg over the years when I was there that we'd want to try to change, everybody said, don't mess with Articles 9 and 10 of the Public Welfare Code, because when we go to try to change something, like say we want to regulate any facility, or we want to regulate even if they're religiously affiliated, we will get all the advocates from some of the religious organizations coming out under legislators, and they'll say, no, we don't want to be regulated, so. But we are gonna change Article 10.
We've proposed legislation to do that. Again, in order to certify and annually inspect family childcare homes, we have to change Article 10. So we are going to venture on opening that floodgate. And yes, we have the statutory language in place. We are waiting to go through the process to see when that might become law, and that will then delete Article 10C, which applies just to the registration process we currently have in place in Pennsylvania, because there will no longer be a registration process. Those facilities, family and child care homes, will undergo an annual inspection, just as you do, and they'll have to, one of the other changes that I will message to you today is that our inspections will become unannounced as required by the federal law. Either on or before November of 2016, we have to make sure that we are in compliance with all the federal laws as well. So we will no longer announce our inspections. I think currently you probably get either a letter or a phone call and giving you a 30-day window in which your certification rep's going to be conducting the inspection. We will no longer be doing that. They'll be unannounced.
What if it's like on a day of a field trip or something like that?
Can you speak up?
What if it's on the day of a field trip?
Like if or if the facility's closed or.
If the facility is closed, then obviously that's going to necessitate an additional trip back to conduct the inspection. If there are still children in care, if not everyone is on that field trip.
Our entire school goes.
Okay.
That's why I'm just curious.
Okay, then obviously we'd have to make a return visit to conduct that inspection.
But also, Tanya, shouldn't maybe some of these providers be aware around what time of the year? I mean, generally, when you
Right.
when you get your certification certificate, it gives you the expiration date. So
generally you know about when you're inspected now, or you have been, right? We do try to get out to do these inspections 2 to 3 months is what we attempt to do. I know depending on sometimes uncovered caseloads and other issues that take priority, it might not be 2 to 3 months, it might be a month, but I think you have a general idea of when you're gonna see someone from the certification office. If it's a situation where not everyone is going on the field trip, because a lot of facilities, they don't send everybody on a given day, they might send 1 or 2 classes, and there's still activities going on at the facility. What really is the key to that is if the director is off-site on that field trip, there has to be someone in charge, okay? And someone delegated to that responsibility. I mean, you could have a parent walk in and I need to talk to the director, I need to talk to someone, I have an issue. When a certification rep walks in the facility, if the director is not on site, we're gonna ask, well, who's the person in charge? I need to see that individual. I'm here to either do an unannounced monitoring inspection, I'm here to do a complaint investigation. And many times when I would ask that question, they'd be like, I don't know. They'd like, you know, it's like.
When you were an inspector, right?
Yes, it's like, wow. So I really want to stress the importance of that. It's, you know, staff need to know the chain of command and, you know, who is responsible if there is an issue, or if a parent comes in, you know, they need to know who's in charge. And as the director, it's the responsibility of you, if you're in that role now, to make sure that all of your staff know who to go to. And I really think that it is also a requirement in regulations.
Yes, I was gonna ask them to find it. Where it says that somebody must be in charge when you're not there. Yeah, this is a working exercise. I think I know, here, let me tell you.
You know?
I found it.
Yeah.
Let's see how long it takes me. Dun, 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 dun.
Can I ask a question while they're looking?
It's 327034, it's, number 3.
Very good, Emily. Were you ever in charge and you know that?
I just printed up and really and truly, I didn't, Julie has the book, but I printed up the responsibilities of the director, but that's only by.
By chance?
Yeah.
Oh, so you found the right page because it's the only page you have.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good way to find it. Everybody hear that?
So,
It's .34. Did you ever know that in the reg? That means when you're off in Hawaii, Tiffany, or whenever you're gone, somebody, but right, must be in charge. And if an inspector came in and found someone, no one in charge, that would be citation. Everybody know what a citation is? Oh, Barbara. Okay? So, as we talk about these things, Kim,
Yeah. Our center does not have an assistant director. It's sort of like if the director's out, she's like, Kim, I need you to look after things, or so-and-so, I need you to look after things. What are, I don't want to say stipulation, but maybe the repercussions of being inspected on a day where someone who's not informed of all the regulations, DPW shows up, and we were left in charge, but we have no idea what, you know what I mean, what actually 3278 is. If they come in and say, why didn't you need this? I don't know, I was left in charge, I was told to answer the phones today. You know, what does that do for the staff member or, you know, the center itself?
What I heard from that, not informed of the regulations. Right there. Why does not every single staff person know the regulations in your facility? That's would be my question. I think it's integral that every single staff person be either given a copy or there's regulations, the regulation requires that a set of regs be posted in a conspicuous location in the facility. I've often said you need to give every single staff person a copy or have them available in their rooms, so when the children are napping or whatever, they can be reading regulations and not on their cell phones or looking up stuff on the internet. They need to be doing something constructive, familiarizing themselves with regulations. And oftentimes when I would go in and inspect, I would ask staff questions. And I was not in there as, oh, they're here to get us, to nail us. I wanted to know if staff knew what they were responsible to do. And oftentimes I found that same thing. They had never seen regulations. It was just like, okay, yeah, I got hired and I was told to go in that room and just, follow that schedule and do whatever, I thought I should be doing. So right there is the issue, because first of all, I think it's really important that when you hire someone, you give them a description or a position description, as I call it, of what is it they're supposed to do. Because then if they're not doing it, how do you hold them accountable if you never told them what the expectations are? I heard you talk earlier about some policies and procedures. I think you should have some type of a personnel handbook. So that, again, if you have staff that don't show up, well, what's the repercussion for that? I don't know. But if it's spelled out in the personnel guidelines, like the first time is an oral warning, the second time is, written warning, the third time, well, you're terminated. Again, the expectations are outlined at the very onset of that employment. And I think, we talk about holding staff accountable. Well, if the director hasn't done his or her job in telling that staff person what the expectations are, then how do you hold someone accountable? So I really think it starts there. And I don't know your roles, but if you don't know the regulations, you need to let the director know that you need a copy of the regulations, because you need to also understand your responsibilities, which are tremendous. You're responsible to ensure health and safety of children. And when parents drop their children off in your care in the morning, all they want is to get a healthy, happy child at the end of the day. So, but, it really is an awesome responsibility that child care staff have. And it is not easy. Being in rooms for many, many years, I know it's a tough job when you've got 2.5-year-olds that, are hungry and tired, and you're trying to, provide the best care possible. But, and I don't mean to digress, but I really feel that that's the issue, is that obviously, if you don't know what the regulations are, how can you be held accountable? And that's where I think the director has not fulfilled her or his responsibilities.
Just as a side comment, in this whole class that we have, those of you who are directors right now, raise your hand. I think I know some. The rest are not, will be,
Okay.
around. But in this whole course, they are I've told you this many times, to respond as if you were the director. So Kim, in that situation, what would the question you just asked, I think you already knew the answer, didn't you?
Well, yeah, but I mean, that currently happens within my center, and it's very difficult when I do know, but then there's people who are left in charge that do not know, and just because their seniority, they're left in charge to answer questions and, things. So that's why I was just wondering what the repercussions would be, because ours is coming soon, like what would happen if that had occurred? Would it come back to where the staff could get a citation for that, or would that go just directly toward the director?
It's the center. The director would have to figure out what that meant. Yeah, Beth.
Should this not be part of the training prior to the start of walking into a classroom? Should that, the policies and procedures handbook for the staff and the blue book should be part of the training prior to walking in?
in a perfect world. But when you're hiring staff and you have to beat the ratio of the room, you have to meet other regulations, sometimes there's not always time to fully train somebody. So that's why when they're saying about the handbook, and it would be great if you could get the staff in and have, a week to train them or even a day, but some days, sometimes you don't, you can't. You have to have a staff person that day, and they have to be in the room, so it's like.
So
Well,
Meg-
even the time it takes now to get clearances, if, that could be a starting point, I'm going to get your clearances, start reading up on the Blue Book or, the systems of
But
operations
then you
or
have to
whatever.
ensure that that's actually happening. Like, you still need that training piece that sometimes you just don't always have the opportunity. Because if you're just handing them something to read, you're assuming that they're going to read it and understand it. And if there's no opportunity for a dialogue between the director and that new staff person, how do you know that they're getting it? So sometimes you do, like you have they're provisional employees, so they're not working by themselves, but that doesn't mean that they necessarily know what the job is, and it doesn't necessarily mean that the person that you're putting them with is explaining those different dynamics as well, so.
People
it's a
sign up, they
challenge.
sign a lot of things they don't read.
Right. Now, as we're talking, remember, just not to digress, but earlier today I said, when you work on that situation this afternoon for the reaction journal, make sure you take into account things we talked about this morning. This is a clear example. What is the director gonna do? What kind of model or plan or leadership plan are you gonna have in place to do that? To make sure, so Becky, you have to put them right into the classroom. Or Charlie, you say the same thing, you have to put them right into the classroom. Okay, so that's day one, you have to do that, but what's gonna happen the rest of the week? What's your next step, right? I mean, I know when are you gonna get everybody up to speed? So think about, I'm not asking you to respond right now, but think about that, because that's part of your assignment this afternoon, is to take the information we talk about this morning with the real life situations, but you have, and say, what would you do? Now, some of you have already discussed, you would have a staff meeting. Others, was it in this, see, I'm losing it. Was it in this class, the summer we got face-to-face, some of you said you closed the facility for training? Tina?
Yes, we do.
I mean, sometimes it reaches the point where you have to say that the facility's closed today, and we're having an in-house training. And, I mean, you've heard of other facilities doing that?
Oh, yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
very, and you probably support that.
Yep. And all your staff have to have a minimum of 6 hours of training annually, right? In addition to the fire safety and first aid, and so some facilities are just doing that. They're closing a day a year, they're closing 2 days a year, and they bring all the staff in and do training. But I think in addition to that, it's really important too, if you can do something on a regular basis with your staff. And I see some people nodding their heads. I think it's really important to get your staff together, to ask questions, go over. I mean, we do that, we have clarifying policies and procedures, regulations. Some person might read it and think this is how to implement it, and another staff person says, no, I don't think that's it, I think this is what we're supposed to do. And having that dialogue is really important, and it I think is helpful to your newer staff too. And it can also be part of their training. I understand that you often don't have the ample time you need to do the training, because you need to meet your ratios in order for, to be in compliance with regulations. But at some point, as Kate said, then you need to plan for that, because you can't expect that staff person to have no training at all, or give them no knowledge.
Barbara?
Can we get back to, say certification walks into a center and the director is not there? I have no problem with that, and I think in my center they would know the chain of command. But they do not know the director's job. They do not do the files. They would, no matter how many times they looked at this,
Like where's
they would
liability
not,
insurance, like that
they would
stuff.
not be capable of walking certification through full inspection. Is that to be expected, that staff would be able to do that?
The individual who is going to be designated in charge when the director is not on site should at least know
Where to find
where
it?
that information is. Yeah.
That's fine.
And also, Tanya, haven't we talked about times when our certification reps will go out and they'll say where the staff files, oh, they're kept in headquarters office, or they're kept in another office, and we don't have them here, and should be having them there, right?
There should be
And
a
the
copy.
difficulty, we're having difficulty training staff and getting staff to understand all this, to put on top of it that they also have to know everything the director's doing is really, really tough.
Well, that's only if you're not there that day.
I know, but sometimes we can't be.
All right, let's get back to what
Well,
Tanya
I
said
don't-
earlier. You know when, right about sort of when your inspection is going to be, and you sort of have to plan around it. Now, don't sometimes some people call and say, I will be gone this week?
Yes,
Okay.
if you know you're gonna be on vacation, if you know your facility's gonna be closed because everybody's going on a field trip, certainly reach out to your rep and just let them know that. I mean, I think we would
They ask.
appreciate that.
They do ask.
Knowing
Well,
that.
now they ask.
Yeah.
They'll say, is there any?
Well, but it doesn't mean that you won't. Now, remember, these unannounced inspections that are coming is a federal requirement coming down the pike.
So I was under the impression, which might be right or wrong, but like I understand that they could come in and just do like an unannounced inspection because of a complaint or something, but if the director was not on site, they would reschedule if it was for your certificate of compliance, is that?
Not necessarily, no, not.
Okay, cause that's what I just asked, recently we were inspected and that's what we were trying to find out, like if it was a week that somebody was on vacation or, I mean, I have an assistant director that can do everything that I can do, but you know, she just said if the director wasn't there, she would have turned around and just came back another day.
Well, I can't say that that necessarily is going to happen all the
Okay.
time. Again, because of just travel and the responsibility of carrying the caseload and the number of facilities that they have to inspect. I can't guarantee that all inspectors are gonna say, oh, I'll come back when the director's here. They may go ahead and continue to do that inspection with the individual designated to be in charge.
So it's really important then that centers do have somebody that can actually carry out all of the responsibilities of the director. Like if you have an assistant or an administrative assistant or someone of that nature, that they can do everything that the director can do and access files and that kind of
They
thing.
need to access files because there's also a regulation that says upon request that all files should have to be made accessible to an agent of the department.
Right.
So,
See if we can find that one.
okay.
All files have to be, have access to the department.
Upon request, yes.
So when an inspector walks in and says, I wanna see, do you even know where that is?
24.
Pardon? 24, ooh, Lisa found it, 24. Oh, 24A. Ah, I didn't even, see, an inspection, departmental access, and that, isn't that also in Article 9 and 10? It's also in the law that the department has access.
Yeah, Article 9 and 10 provide the department access. Yeah, you're gonna have to determine who that person's gonna be and give them all the information that they're going to need if some cert rep shows up and you're not available.
Well, and I mean, the reps will be understanding if that person's in a classroom, and can't get them immediately, they could go and do the site inspection as,
Yes.
you know, until
Yes.
the person in charge can
Sure.
go get the files.
Yes, we do understand that, and you should not be asked to purposely leave your room to be out of compliance.
Okay.
There are very lots of regulations that are assessed at the time of an inspection. And obviously rooms have to be inspected, outdoor play area, or if you have indoor large muscles. So there's a lot of different things that person can be doing until you have an opportunity to access the files for them. Or if you can just tell them where they're at, or, you know, get somebody to come in and cover for you while you run and get them, yes. But you should not be asked to leave your room out of compliance for that.
Go ahead, anybody else on? But now, the same thing, Tina mentioned it too, there'll be other inspections that you may have been subject to that are unannounced. Could have been a complaint or just a follow-up, any time. Have any of you had those unannounced, not related to the annual? What was it for, Barb?
well, she just needed a little place to do it unannounced, and we were small and on her way, I do believe, but it wasn't. It was not a complaint, it was just, yeah, we shared.
Well, yeah, we've,
And I have a follow-up coming too, to make sure that my plan that I submitted has been done, and that's the first time I've ever had somebody come back and do a follow-up.
first time you ever had a follow-up visit? You mean after you've had violations?
This is the first time she's coming next week.
Okay, oh.
Well, in addition to their inspections, they are charged with doing a certain number of allocated unannounced monitoring inspections at certain, at facilities, and we base that on various, things, like if it's a newly certified facility, because we haven't seen it in full operation, if we have, follow-up to do for a particular,
Should there
violation.
always be a follow-up for a plan of action? Is there,
There has,
for certification, do they all, because I've never had the follow-up till
Yeah,
this
but for
year.
the longest time, we didn't either. I would, have to send in pictures of what we had changed, or,
Yeah, right.
dialogue, like physical evidence, but they didn't physically come.
Not always.
Depends,
Right.
yeah. I think
But-
it just depends on the citation.
That's on the
yeah,
caseload.
it depends on, and it depends on the citation, if it can be done through pictures or following up with paperwork, you can scan it, email it, we're doing a lot more with email now, as I'm sure you know. So there's not always on-site follow-up, it depends on the nature of the non-compliance and the caseload and where they're at on particular days. They might have been in the area to do other things, complaints or something else, so they'll stop in and do, the unannounced follow-up, because basically, again, the department during normal business hours can really show up at your doorstep at any time.
We were talking about that earlier, Tanya, you mentioned that the staff should have access to the regulations. You said maybe put a copy in every classroom. What's another way that some of the staff have access to the regulations, besides having a paper copy? Do they know how to get online to get them? All staff should know that.
On your website, you can post them on.
You pull them off on what, yes, so they should always have access to them. So, one of the things we would think about and talk about now, because we're gonna come up with some situations in a little while, is besides having a staff meeting, a day of training, how else can you get the staff to understand and know the regulations?
Email.
Email, what do you mean by email?
You could do it, a regulation a day, or a regulation a week.
Regulation a week. Here's your weekly reader.
Here's your weekly regulation.
Here's your weekly regulation. Well, if you send out an email and here's your weekly regulation, what would you expect the staff to do with that email? Delete it?
No, I would expect them to read it and maybe answer a question or two that you make up.
Okay, Kim?
I once worked for a center where the director would write up like 5 or 6 scenarios, and we had to go and find the codes or whatever that went with them and give it back to her to show that we had actually went through them.
So, what do you think though, I mean, in terms of the staff knowing the regulations, where are some areas where you think that you're gonna get into quote trouble or violate the regs because the staff don't know them?
I think
Lisa?
it's funny, every year, I mean, I have senior staff, so they've been with me for 7 to 10 years. And ratio always comes up, they're in the same room all the time, and it's always a question on what the ratio is. Like, you don't know, because I think they always wanna get away with something, like if I leave the classroom, what's the ratio, just to make sure, or, you know what I mean, it's just like, you should know it.
Oh.
Say it and repeat it 24/7.
Do they know it and think you think they do know it, but
I think
wanna
they do
violate
know, I
it?
think they just play the game, but I think they do know it.
I've actually seen it posted in classrooms.
Yeah, that's what he
And
just
so then
said.
there's,
That's not a bad idea.
it's posted right there,
Yeah.
all the ratios for each of the age groups.
Right.
The other thing I thought was really a neat idea that I saw posted a clock. I don't see one in here, I'm not sure if there's one. But a lot of the childcare facilities have clocks in each room, and right by the clock, hear, see, direct, assess. Because you know all day long, we keep looking at, when's this gonna be over with, when's my shift over? Staff are like, when are we moving on to the next activity? What, is it lunchtime yet? And I saw that, and I thought that was really a neat idea. And I think for staff, again, hear, see, direct, and assess. Those are the critical components of supervision. And maybe it's just like, am I doing that? It's just that reminder all the time throughout the day. So I thought that was really a good idea when I was inspecting. And like I said, I've also seen the ratios posted in the classroom too, because they can't say, oh, I forgot, I didn't know.
You think at least if you posted them, they'd read them? Or still try to?
They'll still.
Anybody else?
I think, like for our center, if I wasn't there for a licensing, day, the one thing that would get us is nap time, because our kids never want to sleep. Nobody sleeps for more than 5 or 10 minutes at a time. So I know sometimes during breaks, I constantly have to step into the role of, covering because of kids not napping, therefore people can't do their breaks. And so I don't know if they all know the regulations, but it's one of those things, what are you supposed to do when we have to do breaks and yet, you can't go to a group of 10 because you have 2 kids who are awake and technically you need 2 staff in that classroom for nap time.
What are you supposed to do?
That's an issue. I know when I'm there, it's easy because I'm there. I can step in, but when I'm not there, I know that's something that they struggle with. And I try to find subs or, somebody who can come in, and it just never seems to happen.
What about a floater? It's really an extra person, and I didn't see it a lot because I know, it's always, of course, paying for staff salaries, which takes a lot of your budget, but in facilities that had it, it worked very well. There was one person, and her job was that she went in and out of the different rooms and provided staff with breaks throughout the day, provided the coverage at nap time, and it is an extra person. Then his primary function was for that, to be available throughout the day. That's one option. Some of you may have
Anybody
others.
else have another option on that? Anybody else have the same problem Chastity does with kids not taking a nap? Barb, yeah, Joyce? Sometime? Becky, no?
No, we don't really have,
They nap?
most of our kids nap.
So what do you give them?
90% of them.
One school gave that to
That
We have a lot of early kids.
Yeah, I think that's what it is.
I think that's
They early,
a lot of.
Some of them are like falling asleep at the lunch table.
Right.
flying at lunch, okay. Well, it's about 10 after 10. We're gonna take a few minute break, take about no more than 10 minutes, please. And we're gonna go back. I have some situations we're gonna go over and discuss in terms of regulations and the role of the director in terms of the regulations.